I personally feel uncomfortable around conflict. Now, we're here today to find out how to argue. But conflict is useful. The question is, how do you deal with conflict the most effectively? Here we go. Author of Negotiating the Non-negotiable talks about how to resolve your most emotionally charged conflicts. Have you found yourself in an argument that felt so frustrating, so at a core aggravating? That's the silliest opinion I've ever heard. It felt just non-negotiable? Well, congratulations, you're a human being. We all experience conflict in our lives, and seeing what's going on in our world today, my hunch is you are probably having at least one of these conflicts about politics. Our country has fallen into what I believe is a tribal trap. Anything that other side says, I shall not believe, I shall not give any credibility to, and I'm gonna do everything I can to prove I'm right, you're wrong, and to stifle you down to raise me up. The problem is not with the what are we arguing about, the problem is with the how. How should we argue? How can we be more effective? And what I've found is that there are three big barriers that we can actually overcome to have more effective conversations. The big things: 1. Identity, 2. Appreciation, and 3. Affiliation. Let's start with identity. Now, first of all, this is a hot issue. Why do we get so emotional in these conflict situations? It often goes back to something deeper: identity. What are the core values, the core beliefs that are feeling threatened inside of you as you're having that conversation with the other side? The moment your identity gets hooked in these conflicts, all of a sudden your emotions become, boy, this is a wholly different conflict now. It's now your pride. Your sense of self is on the line. You need to know who you are and what you stand for. What are the values and beliefs that are driving me to fight for this stance on this issue? The more you understand who you are, the more you can try to get your purpose met and stay balanced, even when the other threatens those core values and beliefs. Each side wants to feel appreciated, and yet the last thing they want to do is to appreciate the other side. That's a problem. Listen and understand. When you're in the midst of the conflict, don't talk. Take the first 10 minutes. Consciously listen to the other side. What's the value behind their perspective? What's the logic, the rationale? Why do they hold this perspective on immigration or healthcare? Once you truly understand and see the value in their perspective, let them know, I hear where you're coming from, and you know what? That makes sense. There is nothing more in the world that we like than to feel appreciated. Recognize your power to appreciate them. Third, affiliation. What's the emotional connection like between you and the other side? We typically approach these conflict situations as me versus you. My opinion on healthcare versus yours, my party's perspectives on immigration versus yours. That's just gonna leave the two of you like rams butting heads. Find common ground. Turn that other person from an adversary into a partner, so it's no longer me versus you, but the two of us facing the same shared problem. Ask the other person, look, what's your advice on how we can get as many of our interests met at the same time? Change the nature of your conversation. Now, you put these three things into practice, it can transform your relationships. Imagine what would happen if we started a revolution, but a positive revolution of greater understanding, greater appreciation, greater affiliation, how we could transform politics, how we could transform our country and ultimately our world. I believe it's possible, but it starts with each one of us. One won't believe or give credence to whatever the opposing side says, and the person will do everything in her power to establish her rightness and your error while holding you down in order to advance myself. The issue is with the how, not the what, or the topic of our disagreement. How ought we to argue? How can we improve our effectiveness? And I've discovered that there are three significant obstacles that we can actually get through to have more fruitful interactions. The three important concepts are identity, appreciation, and affinity. Starting with identity. First things first. This is a contentious issue. Why do we become so emotionally charged during these conflicts? It frequently refers to something more fundamental: identity. What are the fundamental principles and convictions that, while you converse with the opposing side, make you feel threatened? Your identity becomes entangled in these conflicts the instant that happens, and your feelings become into, boy, this conflict has changed drastically. You are now proud of it. Your self-worth is at stake. You must be aware of your identity and your values. What moral principles and beliefs motivate me to advocate for this position on this matter? Understanding what you stand for may assist you in striving harder to achieve your purpose and maintain equilibrium, even when someone else poses a danger to your essential values. Even if both sides desire appreciation, neither side wants to show it to the other. That is a difficulty. Pay attention and comprehend. Don't chat while the conflict is still going on. The first 10 minutes, please. Consider hearing the opposing viewpoint. What purpose does their viewpoint serve? What is the justification or logic? Why do they have this viewpoint on healthcare or immigration? Once you have genuinely comprehended and valued their viewpoint, tell them, I see where you're coming from, and you know what? That is reasonable. Nothing makes us happier than to feel valued in this world. Recognize your ability to love them. Adherence is the third. How emotionally connected do you feel to the other side? We frequently take a me versus you stance in these conflict situations. My viewpoint on healthcare is different from yours, as are the views of my party on immigration. That will only result in the two of you clashing heads like rams. Find a point of agreement. Change the other person from an enemy to a collaborator so that we are both working together to solve the same issue rather than me versus you. Ask the other person for ideas on how to meet as many of your interests as possible at once. Modify the topic of your discussion. Your relationships may change if you put these 3 ideas into practice. Imagine what would happen if we began a revolution, but a revolution of better understanding, appreciation, and affiliation. How could we change politics? How could we change our nation? And eventually, how could we change our whole world? I think it's doable, but each of us has to take the first step.